Hey guys, thank you so much for joining another episode of the Unruly Hour with Savage Joy. Tonight I have two special guests. They're both with the Movement for a People's Party, which a lot of people are talking about, especially right now because of the incredible convention coming up. So we have Eynelys Vinson, and you are from REV LA, correct? And then we have Nick Brana, who is from Movement for a People's Party, and you are the national coordinator. So thank you both so much for joining us and coming to share a little bit about your organization.
Yeah, thanks for
Great to be with you, Joy. Thanks for having us on. It's such an exciting time.
It is. And thank you for providing us something to be excited about. We need that right now. But I digress. So how did the both of you meet? Nick, I know you live in DC. Did you guys kind of connect online and then just start working together?
And Eynelys, you should tell the story.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having us on. I'm really excited to be here. So to introduce myself, my name is Eynelys Vinson. I am the vice chair of Our Revolution Los Angeles. I'm a candidate for Palmdale City Council, and I'm a member of Movement for a People's Party. So this all started when I started volunteering for Bernie's campaign. And after that, I moved on to become the special projects director for Cenk Uyghur's congressional campaign. And once that was done, I really wanted to take all of that energy that we all had and really get involved in the community. So I joined Our Revolution Los Angeles, and it was through my work there that I came across Nick. I remember I saw him once on Jimmy Dore talking about Movement for a People's Party. And it was funny because Jerry, our field director at Our Revolution Los Angeles and the West Coast coordinator for MPP, I was talking with him about it, and he and I had already been talking about, we really need a new party. We were just so tired, so tired. We were like, what should we call it, And then I see this video of Nick, and I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. So I shared the video on our Slack, and next thing you know, we were talking with Nick, and ever since we got in contact with Movement for People's Party and started working with them, they have been just amazing. I mean, and now it's we, because we're a part of it now. So yeah, that's how we met. And I'm just so excited to work with everybody and build this major new party that we so desperately need.
Absolutely. And I think people are even more open now than ever before. In 2016, we went through, hell and back. And Nick, I believe I first met you at Occupy DNC. Were you there?
I was there, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the first time we met at the protest. And then we were like, well, maybe Bernie will run again. So we got like this much hope back. And now we're like, all right, dude, 78, like we're done. Like we really need to move on. Like it really is not me, us. So we got to get something else started. I was part of Draft Bernie. I went to the convention in DC. That was incredible. It felt like we had our movement back. I got to meet Brother Cornell and all those wonderful people. So the intention was there, but Bernie was not having it. So did you then after that just kind of realize maybe we should just build a party instead of like a party around a person?
Well, what happened after that is that, the story that you tell it is, we began essentially, I worked on Bernie's campaign. I was the national political outreach coordinator, did outreach to the DNC members for him in 2016, then helped him found Our Revolution and was the first electoral manager. And those experiences taught me that the Democratic Party is just as corrupt as the Republican Party. And so I got together with some other Bernie staff and delegates and volunteers, organizers. We all started Draft Bernie for a People's Party in February of 2017. And then we invited Bernie, like you referenced, to the Convergence Conference, which we held at American University in September of 2017. And Dr. West and I went on Democracy Now! In April and extended the invitation for him to join us at the Draft Bernie town hall. And Bernie wanted to run for president as a Democrat. He hadn't quite, given up on the party yet. And so Bernie did not come. But what happened after that was that we said, well, we formed initially with the mission of, drafting Bernie to form a new party. But we had a discussion with our members and we said, and put it to a vote. And we said, do we believe that we should continue to form a major new party, continue the movement? And overwhelmingly, our members decided that yes, we should continue because our mandate comes not from Bernie, it comes from the working people who are struggling day in and day out in a government that is the richest country in the world, yet is allocating essentially all of its resources to the top fraction of 1%. I mean, you now have the just moral atrocity of two people who have the same wealth of the bottom half of Americans. And so it's really the fact that the majority of Americans now, 57%, are demanding an independent party in the US that is what kept us going and said, yes, we need to build this party.
Absolutely. And I remember meeting you at in Chicago, the People Summit. And that was during Draft Bernie too. And I remember when Bernie got on stage and with Roseanne DeMauro and people were holding up Draft Bernie signs saying, Draft Bernie. And Roseanne was like, yes, yes, I'm all for it. Yes, yes. And Bernie was just kind of like shying away. What do you think the overall reason was? Do you think it's because he signed the contract with Dems or because he was worried he wouldn't be on the debate stage and get as much, attention for voting? What do you think it was?
You mean, why did he run as a Democrat again instead of an independent?
Well, no, with you guys, join the Draft Bernie.
Oh, I see. I think it's because he wanted to run as a Democrat again, and he thought that it was going to, disadvantage him, if he was to basically start a conversation on an independent party. Now part of the case that we made to him was, Bernie, okay, just come join us for a conversation, at the Draft Bernie town hall, and whether you end up doing it or not, it's going to give you leverage that you need in the Democratic Party because playing nice with the Democratic Party is not the way you get anything. We've seen not even, and so we said it would give you leverage basically. I mean, when Trump ran and got the Republican nomination in 2016, he didn't say, I'm going to support the nominee no matter what, even if you cheat me. He said, if you don't give me a fair race, I'm going to run independent. And the RNC freaked out. And they said, we better give this guy at least something of a fair race, and not manipulate things against him too far, And so, that's the kind of thing, that you've had to do. But obviously not even that has proven enough because we see that the Democratic Party now, from Obama, who promised us in 2008 progressive policies, he said all the right things. He said he stood for Medicare for all. Getting special interest money out of politics, tackling the climate crisis, improving worker benefits and unions, building those up again. So he promised that. And then Hillary, she was a completely different, she had trouble promising anything progressive. But then Biden is even worse. Biden hasn't hired, I think, a single Bernie staffer. His pledge on Medicare, reducing the age of Medicare was worse than Hillary's. Hillary promised 50. He promised to lower it to 60. He's even backing away from a public option now, publicly. And this is what he does before he gets elected, before he gets our votes. Imagine after he gets our votes. So the Democratic Party is going in the wrong direction. It's becoming more conservative. It's becoming more corporate, and that's why so many people are waking up now that, that the convention is becoming such a success, the People's Convention.
Absolutely. Do you think that people are aware that other countries have way more parties than we do?
I don't think so. I think that the average person thinks that because they're trained, people are trained in the U.S. I mean, I've been to other countries. I've never, watched their news. I've never lived in another country, but it strikes you immediately. Just the U.S. is one of the most heavily propagandized countries in terms of, when you grow, your education, the mainstream media you receive. And so we're trained to believe that the U.S. is the pinnacle of kind of like global democracy. We were one of the first democracies, and so that we've kind of perfected it, and everyone else is some lesser version of us, being the apex. And of course, the reality couldn't be further from the truth. Most countries have multi-party systems, particularly Europe, Latin America. And that gives more choice. It's just ironic that such a hyper-capitalist country like the United States, which is founded on the idea of choice and democracy as some of its highest ideals, only provides you two parties, which are basically the same because they're both funded by corporations.
Right. And then they're both speaking at the convention this week. So there's definitely no difference there. So this week was the convention. I sure as hell couldn't stomach even a second of it. Did you guys watch it all?
I tried. I sort of have to because it's part of my job now because I do a podcast, but it was difficult and I certainly couldn't get through all of it. I mean, it was so substanceless. Everything was Trump bad. There was no, here's why you should vote for me. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's why you should feel inspired to come and, cast your vote. No, it was just Trump bad. Everything's on fire. So we have to choose Biden. It was pathetic, in my opinion. And not to mention, and I would be remiss if I didn't say this, the fact that they only gave AOC 90 seconds and it was pre-recorded. Meanwhile, there were a plethora of Republicans speaking for far longer. I mean, they just told us who they want to appeal to. They just showed it to us in plain sight.
And they let the Republicans, like John Kasich, they let him attack AOC. The speeches are pre-screened. And so that attack that he made against AOC, they approved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Incredible. Thank you so much for the donation, Brent. One of our regular viewers, Brent McKinney, asked, wondering why MPP decided it was strategic to start a new party and not join the Greens, since you guys stand for most of the same platform and already have a large ground game to get on national ballots.
Well, I think Eynelys could speak to this too, but what I will say is that I initially, when I left the Democrats in 2016, I initially supported and endorsed Jill Stein and joined her. The campaign invited me to their election night watch party. In the end, I wrote an article that went viral in the Huffington Post in support of her. But it struck me, as it has struck so many people I know, that the Green Party, unfortunately, has picked up a sense that it is not viable, a stigma, that it is so difficult, and I would say now impossible to shake off. And so it is easier now to start fresh with something that that gives people a sense of greater possibility. Than to essentially kind of try to funnel into something which has been around for a long time and which people have gotten used to writing off, unfortunately. I'll also say that there's something of a philosophy to the idea of a people's party. We're looking to invite, essentially, and build a coalition of all working people. Whereas the Green Party, unfortunately, can come across as being environmentally focused.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is I don't doubt that in the future we will end up working closely with many of the candidates that have run in the Green Party, and that have been there up until now. I don't doubt that we will collaborate in the future.
Absolutely.
Great question. That was actually on my list, so thanks a lot. So we are leaving the Dems in probably by the thousands, if not millions, right now. And a lot of us are just kind of like at that point where we're like, okay, now what? How do you try and convince people that, they should be open-minded to something new, essentially, when it comes to politics?
Well, go ahead, Eynelys, if you want to say something.
I would just say, the only thing we really need to look at is the results so far. So all I would say to people is look at where you're at today. Look at your quality of life. Look at the healthcare crisis that we're facing. Look at the financial depression that we're facing, and look at the quality of life that you have and how hard you have to work not to have luxuries, just to meet bare minimum necessities that we need to survive. And I think most people can agree that it's paycheck to paycheck, that it's a struggle. And the truth is, we've got a corrupt and criminal government that is murdering its citizens, whether it's through lack of health care, through misinformation, because let's not forget that Fauci came out a few weeks ago and admitted live on camera that they lied to Americans and told them masks didn't work when they knew they did, thereby murdering Americans through misinformation. So we've become so numb because we're so entrenched in corruption that it's just become the norm now. And we're here to completely break that structure and start fresh with actual values that people can relate to, by making sure everybody has health care, by making sure everybody can get an education without being in debt for the rest of their lives, by making sure that people can have basic necessities such as food and shelter. And, the last thing I'll say on this is there's this great quote by Jon Stewart, who was actually the person who first sparked my interest in politics. And he did this debate with Bill O'Reilly. And he said, why is it that if you're a corporation or a company and you use a tax loophole, you're a savvy businessman, but if you're a mother of two who needs food stamps, you're a moocher? How does that make any sense? You're paying into that system with your tax dollars. Don't you dare let these thieves tell you that you are entitled, that you're trying to mooch off the system. It is your money. That's why you pay taxes. So that if you ever need to fall back on a social safety net, you can. It is your damn money. The real moochers and the real thieves are the billionaires we have in our states that aren't paying any taxes, and their corporations.
Absolutely. How about yourself, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to look at how the country is now. I don't think people require convincing, essentially, on the idea. I mean, people are convinced that we need something different. I mean, every 4 years, the choices are worse. When you look at the two parties, you see there's just an enormous continuity between the policies that they enact. There is no party in the United States if you want inequality, to decrease, if you want a more equal society. There is no party in the United States if you want Medicare for all and like actual access to healthcare free for everyone. There is no party if you want free public college. There is no party if you want to tackle the climate crisis. There is no party to end the wars. There is no party to end the surveillance, the mass surveillance. So like on issue after issue, these two parties, while there are differences between them, neither of them speaks for working people. And that's the problem. It's not good enough anymore for one to be marginally better than the other. And that's become absolutely, that's been emphasized during the pandemic, where in the United States, our government chose a response to the pandemic intentionally and knowingly that was going to result in a massive unemployment crisis, that was going to result in a small business apocalypse, about 40% of small businesses that are projected to go out of business, about 42% of jobs that are expected not to come back, 30 million people on unemployment. Our government chose that because when the pandemic struck, European countries also faced a choice of what kind of policy response do we enact. And in many of those countries, instead of actually increasing unemployment insurance, letting everybody become unemployed, not enacting a universal basic income, those countries to begin with, they already have like a single payer system. So they're better off from the start. But then they also chose to just cover payroll for workers. They subsidized employee payroll for businesses that had to that would have otherwise had to lay people off. And so everybody kept their job. There wasn't a destruction of small business, and they waited it out, until they socially distanced, and they waited until they could come back to work. Here in the U.S., it's been an absolute catastrophe. And of course, the reason that was done was because the policies that were passed, like the CARES Act in March, they were designed just to bail out Wall Street. It had nothing to do with people's interests in mind. So European countries picked policies with, where the end goal was to actually help people and get through the pandemic. And our government picked a policy that was just going to maximize the trillions of dollars, going to Wall Street and do nothing for the people. They just made the incredibly callous calculation that somehow everybody's going to lose their job. But then everybody's already living paycheck to paycheck, 80% of people. But somehow we expect that equation to square. Somehow we expect people to continue paying for food and paying for rent. Obviously, that doesn't work. So now we have, more than 28 million people who are facing eviction, the greatest child hunger crisis in the nation's history, bread lines that are stretching for miles across the country. It's a new Great Depression. And people should always remember that this was not the economic catastrophe that followed the pandemic was not because of the pandemic. It was because of the Democrats and the Republicans and how they chose to respond to the pandemic.
Absolutely. And we see Nancy Pelosi this tomorrow decline to have people do a vote. Democrat. So thank you so much for the donation, Ray. Ray Foley says CIA Obama needs to be called out and people will run to People's Party. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Ray.
Somebody brought up a really great point, and I apologize, I didn't see who. Someone in the comments brought up ranked choice voting. I think if that were implemented, I know it is in Maine and a few cities in California, but I feel like if that were implemented, I think movement for People's Party would be much easier to implement as well. What are your thoughts on that?
It would, of course, it would benefit. But the reason that we don't have ranked choice voting, just like it's the same reason we don't have multi-member districts and a multi-party system, is because, when you just basically anything about how our society is organized, you can figure out by asking yourself, how would the oligarchs structure, society to maximize their control over it? 2 parties are easier to control than 6 or 12, like other countries have. Okay, so you just have 2, And so the electoral system is the same. The electoral system has been contorted to try to artificially prop up these 2 parties that would never exist if you created a different system, with multi-member districts and ranked choice voting. And so there is some exciting movement on that because Maine, they became the first state in the last couple of years to enact ranked choice voting as a state. Massachusetts has it on the ballot in 2020. But we as the Movement for a People's Party, we do not believe that ranked choice voting is necessary. It will help, and we want to implement it when we throw out the Democrats and Republicans, but we don't think it's necessary at this point to essentially come to power, win congressional seats, take a majority in the House and Senate, and kick these 2 parties out of the White House in 2024.
Right on. So As far as logistics, I think these are some of people's biggest questions. How do you create a new party? How do you get them on the ballot in all 50 states? Like how is there paperwork? How do you have to file each state separately? Things like that. What are the mechanics of it all?
That is how it works. You had it. You were pretty close. Essentially, ballot access in the United States and state party formation is a state-by-state process. And so that means that in each state you have to file to create a party, and then you have to achieve ballot access for that party. And to achieve ballot access, it usually involves collecting thousands of signatures, so petition collecting. In some states, it involves running a candidate, getting a minimum threshold, usually like 1%, 3%, or 5% for that candidate on a statewide level. And so there's kind of a mythology out there that says that ballot access is logistically impossible, and it's impossible to create a new party because the system is just so rigged, the new party creation system, the rules for how it works. But that's not true. And, one of the greatest kind of examples of that is the fact that the Green Party in 2016, for example, got ballot access in 48 states. A few of them were write-in, but still the Green Party, which it doesn't have, the greatest amount of resources or staff, and yet they still managed to do it. They have about an annual budget, about $300,000. And 3 full-time staff equivalents, around that amount. And so with that level of kind of infrastructure, they've still been able to put together an operation that could get ballot access in 48 states with some write-ins. And so you can just imagine now, if you're talking about bringing orders of magnitude greater resources to bear with the progressive movement, and some of the amazing figures that are joining us, who have such great resonant followings, Senator Nina Turner, Dr. Cornel West, then you're talking about something that brings, massively greater resource to the table, and those barriers can be blown out of the water.
Absolutely. Eynelys, do you want to add anything to that?
Now, look, all I'll say is I feel this is the perfect storm, because the Democratic and Republican parties have proven themselves to be completely incapable of actually doing anything to help Americans. And so people have had it. The largest voting bloc in the country is non-voters, followed by non-affiliation. People do not feel represented. So we're at the perfect time, because we've got a wave of progressive patriots, because that's what they are. And in truth, patriotism has been hijacked for far too long by the most corrupt. So we're going to take that back. These are the real patriots that are coming in and actually being brave enough to start something new and to fight for a party that actually represents Americans. So I think it's perfect. I think we've got the right people involved, and I think that Americans have had it. And the Democratic and Republican parties, they should be very concerned right now, because what's coming next, they don't want any part of it, but we do, and we're very excited.
Right on. Well, what does in theory, what would the epitome of a perfect MPP candidate be? Either comparatively to someone, or what would they stand for? What is your ideal as far as the candidates you'd want to be running?
For me, I can only speak for myself, but for me, it's all about policy. So they would have to support basic progressive policies such as Medicare for All, such as Green New Deal, such as free education and getting rid of college debt. At this moment, we need a UBI, so I'm not interested in personality. I'm not interested in identity politics. Do you have the right policies, and are you actually willing to fight and stand up and not be swallowed by the corruption in Washington? Those are the only two things that I care about.
And I would add to that the greatest bottom line, and that, that is core and fundamental to our being from the beginning as Movement for a People's Party, is that we are building a corporate-free party. So this is a party that is free of corporate money and influence, because as Bernie said, the most important lesson of 2016 from him was that you cannot both take corporate money and represent working people. That is an oxymoron, and the same, just like it applies to candidates, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, it also applies to parties. And so just a few weeks ago, the DNC rejected a measure on the Rules Committee to get corporate money out of the party. Instead, they had a corporate lobbyist come up and defend the measure for allowing DNC members to be corporate lobbyists. So for corporate lobbyists to sit on the DNC itself, and also for the party to take corporate money, corporate PAC money. And so that is a kind of bare minimum that we're saying, it's not Democrat versus Republican, it's right versus the left even. It's the oligarchs versus everyone else. And it's the corporate empires versus everyone else. And the dividing line between that is the one that Bernie drew in 2016. And that is, do you get your money? Are you funded? Are you powered by corporations, by billionaires, or are you powered by the people in small dollar increments, $27 at a time? $19 is our average donation at the Movement for a People's Party. And so, we're very proud of that. And that's what it takes to fight back. It's possible now because we have the internet. There hasn't been an effort to establish kind of, a major party on this scale, during the time of the internet. And we have that ability. It's the same thing that made Bernie's campaign successful. The small dollar, massive, small increment fundraising allows us to do it as well, allows us to get recurring donations. And that wasn't possible before. Just like we can also get the word out through social media, whereas in the past, before the internet, you had to, you were more constricted to the gatekeepers of information through the corporate media. And so now we have the ability to communicate, support each other, organize, spread our message, fundraise, all peer-to-peer, thanks to the internet and social media. And that's powering the rise of new parties in other countries, like Morena, where progressives tried to actually reform their neoliberal parties for decades and finally said to hell with it in 2014. They formed a new party. 4 years later, they had kicked out both houses of the national legislature, taken majorities in them. They had also elected a new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and taken the majority of the mayorships across the country. And so, when we ask ourselves, when we set out on this mission for a political revolution, that's what a political revolution looks like. That's what it looks like when you sweep out the corporate parties to that degree. Unfortunately, despite people's best efforts, we gave it a really good shot, it is not a small trickle of candidates here and there that happen to be the exception to a corporate tidal wave every single election. And so, what we need, the change that we need, is just on a scale that is much greater. It is like what Morena did, and it's like what's happened in other European countries recently too, with
Absolutely.
new parties.
So, as saying those things, do you think it's feasible that we may have some MPP candidates on ballots in 2 years, 4 years?
It's not just feasible, you can count on it.
Yeah, we're really excited. We're going to be running candidates by the midterms, and we will be running a presidential candidate in 2024.
Nice. Oh, I did not know that. That's awesome. That is awesome. And I'm in Pennsylvania, so let me know what I can do for signatures and all that fun stuff. I will definitely help out.
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you, Joy.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this insane convention you guys have on the 30th. It's like literally a dream lineup. Queen Nina, first of all, Brother Cornell, and Ryan Knight, who I've had several times. My viewers freaking love him, and as do I. So, you guys got so many amazing people, and you just added Mike Gravel and Marianne Williamson. So how excited are you that you were planning this and then these incredible people were like down to join it?
Okay, I'm gonna answer this one first. Okay, because
Totally.
I remember I'm right with you, Joy. I love Nina so much because she's so honest. I remember when I joined Jeng's campaign, I was like, I will be the Nina Turner to your Bernie Sanders. I literally said those words to him, so I'm just so incredibly honored to be able to, speak alongside not only her, but Dr. West. Can I just say, can we give some love to Jimmy Dore? He's hilarious. He makes my day better through the frustration. You know what I mean? We just have so many amazing speakers. Nick, of course, is going to be speaking. And honestly, I just can't believe how far we've come. If someone would have told me that I would be doing this right now, I wouldn't even know how to fathom that. I feel like this is the most important thing that I will probably ever do because, building a new party that actually represents people and that has this kind of passion and patriotism and leadership, it's like a dream come true. I see a future so bright possible for us, and I have a hope that I have not had in a very long time. So I'm so stoked.
Awesome. How about yourself, Nick?
It is. It's really beautiful to watch. This is a watershed moment in history. It is a which side are you on moment in history, because the degree to which these two corporate parties have abused working people in this country is inexcusable, and they do not deserve to govern. That is the bottom line, and we're going to change that as the Movement for a People's Party. At the end of our convention, with all the amazing speakers that Eynelys talked about, and we're not even done. I think you're going to be excited by some of the people that we announce the next couple of days. So that is a Savage Joy exclusive here. Be looking for that.
It's not me, guys. Sorry.
Extra. Read all about it.
And at the end of the convention, we are going to cast a historic vote with all participants to form a major new corporate-free party in the United States of America. And there will be thousands upon thousands of people who participate in that vote. And it will create a mandate to change the direction of this country. And I think that when we look back 4 years from now, when we're hosting the People's Convention of 2024, poised to throw out the corporate parties, poised to elect the People's Party president in the United States, when we reflect back on the story of how the American political revolution was won, we're going to remember the People's Convention of 2020. And we're going to remember this as a pivotal moment in American history, when people stood up and they said, enough is enough. We are now taking charge, and we're going to craft our own destiny. We're getting off this path that you're carrying us on. We're going to break, and we're going to form our own future.
Absolutely. It was something, and Marianne may speak on this or what have you, but, since we're, 3 months away from voting for the general, Marianne did make a kind of like a vote shaming comment about a month ago. It kind of broke my heart because I love her. So being she said she is voting for Biden and such, what do you think her reason is for still going? Do you think she's thinking about the future, or do you have any context, kind of background you can give on that?
Yeah, having spoken to her and others of our speakers, of course, there's a number of them who feel that Trump should be defeated and that we should vote him out. And vote Biden in, not because they have any love for Biden, but because they feel that Trump is danger to the country. Obviously, they both are, but that doesn't preclude them believing that even if Biden was to win, they know that Biden is not going to, that he's not going to serve working people. I mean, just 3 weeks ago, he told a teleconference of fundraisers that he wasn't going to pass any legislation to rein in corporations in the United States. And so they know that. And so those two ideas are not incompatible. The idea that we have, they think that we have to beat Trump. And then the idea, though, that at the same time, we must form a major new party to actually take us in a positive direction, because electing Biden is not taking us in a positive direction. Of course, MPP's view is that we encourage people to vote their conscience in 2020. Be that any candidate, however you choose. But the important thing, as the speakers are recognizing by joining us, is that after the election, we break off of this path, this free fall into oligarchy and authoritarianism in the United States by building a major new corporate free People's Party.
Absolutely. Brent, thank you so much for another donation. Nick, please reach out to Tulsi and ask her to join you. I saw a tweet from you guys saying, hey, I see that the DNC snubbed you. Shocker, but you're welcome to join us. Oh, wait, I'm looking at your face. Is that one of the people you're announcing?
Well, I think we'll just have to wait and see on Tulsi. But we have absolutely extended the invitation to her. It's just a disgrace that that the only woman of color, who received delegates, was not invited. Essentially, it's been a DNC, National Convention tradition to invite every candidate who gets delegates to speak. Tulsi was absolutely snubbed out of her speaking role. And that's because she's had the courage to speak out against the military-industrial complex and endless war and imperialism. And there's no place for that, in the Democratic Party, obviously. So we'd be honored to have Tulsi join us.
All right. Well, I'm gonna leave it there, but I'm pretty good with body language. You didn't deny it. Is there a certain, do you think as a whole your members are Greens, Dems? I assume it's a mixture, but is there one kind of one group, lack of a better term, more so than others?
What would you say, Eynelys?
Honestly, I mean, you'd be surprised how many people, it's like a lot of Republicans, believe it or not, actually love our message. Every independent I've come across. And, most Democrats. So it's weirdly enough, one of the few times where I have seen people from literally every spectrum go, yeah, that makes sense. Because once you start talking to them about just basic, simple truths of their day-to-day lives and how crappy it is that they can't even survive, they all start going, hey, yeah, where is the money going? Like, once you start telling them, these corporations that say that they're people, they just got 4.2 trillion. So if they're people, why don't they give that back and get 1,200 like the rest of us? Wait, where is the money going? Wait, why are my streets still, filled with potholes? And why are my buildings still crumbling if I just had to pay this new tax for infrastructure? Wait, where's my money going? Wait, where is my money going? And that's something that, especially during these times, during this pandemic, where people are having to penny pinch so much because they're struggling, because they can't pay the rent, because they don't know how they're going to put food on the table. Now more than ever, they want to know, where is my money going? And the truth is, it's been stolen by the criminals that we have in our government, and they've used it to enrich themselves and their already rich friends even more. So once you start talking to people about those day-to-day issues, the fact that they can't even they can't even get sick. They can't even get sick in this country because if they don't have insurance, they're going to go into debt? They can't even afford their medication. Once you start talking about these day-to-day things, it starts clicking for people. Oh, they've been pitting us against each other this entire time so that we would be so busy fighting amongst ourselves and blaming each other that we would never realize they're screwing all of us and they have their boots on all of our necks. And people are waking up. So I think this is the perfect time.
We have, independents, former Democrats, former Republicans, all joining us. And it's a beautiful collage. And like Eynelys was saying, the oligarchy survives. It feeds off of dividing us, off of throwing us crumbs and having us fight over the crumbs as the multiracial, multi-generational working class in the United States. And we're breaking through that in a way that I think is very promising. The way that we see people who, voted for Hillary Clinton, people who voted for Bernie, people who voted for Trump, all supporting us and saying that, yes, we're with you. That tells you that I think that, while the establishment and the media they survive off of kind of classifying and dividing people into that, factionalizing the working class, that kind of illusion, that, ideological prison that they've put people in is dissolving right now. And those barriers that they've erected that have for so long maintained their power are coming down. And people are saying, wait a minute, we're all in this together, and you see that in the way that I think most inspiringly recently, in the way that people rose up across the country in hundreds of cities and towns after George Floyd was murdered by the police in Minneapolis. The way that, not just kind of historically Black cities, but majority white cities, were massive amounts of protests. And so that is it's just a beautiful symbol of the solidarity that is emerging among people that cannot, that cannot be contained anymore. That people saying, yes, that was wrong, including people who are white, people who are Latino, people who are of other races standing up and saying, that's wrong. We're all in this together. And so there is this amazing kind of solidarity that is an emerging consciousness in the United States. And I would say it's the same solidarity that is feeding, empowering the movement for a People's Party.
Awesome. That gives me goosebumps. It's so nice to be hopeful about something right now. It's awesome. So I do want to also talk about tomorrow, Occupy Congress. I saw that on the Twitter. So Nick, do you want to get into that at all? How can people participate tomorrow?
Well, this is, I believe, an initiative of United Left. And so they are partaking in that. We've kind of like been so busy with the convention. That's been our kind of like overriding focus. But we did, I guess we're proud that we helped inspire the action that United Left is taking now. Because in July, we took action at more than 50 members of Congress's homes across the country. We marched to their houses, we led honking car parades to their houses, and we demanded that they pass a people's stimulus that includes a basic income, covering payroll, Medicare for all, defunding the police, canceling student debt, and canceling rent and mortgage payments for the duration of the pandemic. I'm personally proud that that tactic is taking a life of its own, and that United Left is pursuing it, and that other groups are pursuing it, because for far too long, the purveyor of these policies that are so oppressive towards working people and so divisive towards working people have never had to actually suffer the consequences of the policies themselves, or even interact or experience people who do. They live in gated communities. They live in parallel universes that have no bearing in the lived reality, that most people experience across the country. And so, we said they need to see us. They need to see us, and they need to hear it, and we need to bring it to their doorstep. And we did. And I've just been very heartened to see that so many different that so many different groups and so many different people are taking that on, and that it's picking up. And you see protests outside the mayor's house in Chicago, or in Portland, or in LA. And so I think it's very positive development. And as NPP, we have as part of our philosophy we believe in being a movement party. So we believe in both direct action and in the construction of an electoral party. And we believe those two things go hand in hand.
Right on. What is something you would like to leave the viewers with to take away, so that they can check out MPP, they can start receiving newsletter or your emails rather, and just kind of convince them to have an open mind?
Yeah. So I would just say to anyone who has felt disenfranchised, who has felt like they don't have a voice, what's the point in going and voting? Nothing is ever going to change anyway. If you feel that way, get up and help us do something to change it. This is how we make change. This is how we get the progress that we want. And it's not going to happen if we sit at home and complain and do nothing. This is it. This is the moment. We have to seize it, and we have to take this all the way to the White House, because that's how we're actually going to get progress in our country. And we have to remember, nothing was ever handed to us. Nothing that we've ever gotten in this country has ever been handed to us. We had to fight for all of the rights that we've got. The women's rights movement had to fight for women to be able to vote. The civil rights movement had to fight for desegregation. And even that hasn't really happened all the way yet, because we have modern segregation going on that we still have to fix. So we have to fight for what we want and for the changes that we want. So if you guys are tired of not believing what's coming out of politicians' mouths, if you're tired of the same old, if you're tired of politics as usual and you actually want real change, then go to peoplesconvention.org and join us Sunday, August 30th. So it's going to be 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be virtual. Come and join us and be part of history.
I don't know if you can top that, Nick, but you're up.
I would say that this is a defining moment in U.S. history. This represents people reaching the end of what they're willing to tolerate, and really asking themselves, what kind of world do we want to build out of the ashes of this neoliberal era, the ashes of this pandemic and this economic catastrophe? Because with disaster comes tragedy and the need to provide immediate relief to people, but also comes the opportunity to reimagine the country and the world that we live in. And we all know that it doesn't have to work this way. We can build something that is so much better, that is so much more inclusive. We can initiate a 21st century progressive era. And I would say that the thing that has most inspired me recently is reading the comments on social media about how many people are saying that this has given them hope for the first time. And that's how I feel myself too. For the first time in a long time, it feels like we do have the power, and like we can do this.
Right on. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. This was awesome. I'm so glad that my tech issues didn't impede this. Also, sorry to the audience. I apologize. I had to move this up a little, but I'm so grateful that they were, able to still do the show. And definitely tune in on the 30th. It's going to be an incredible convention, and with just some insane speakers. Also, a few that Nick will be announcing. Wink, wink. Don't worry. I only. I won't say anything on Twitter. No, I won't. But so thank you guys so much for watching and for your donations. You're incredible. Yesterday, Pat and I went on Nina freaking Turner's podcast, Hello Somebody, to discuss our book. She's read the book. We gave her a digital copy while it's printing, and thankfully she loved it. And so that'll be coming out shortly. And of course, I'll put it on blast when that comes out. And Tuesday, I have one of my most favorite people in the world, Mr. Mike Figueredo from Humanist Report will be on. So other than that, thank you all for watching. And thank you both so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great to talk to you, Joy.
Take care.
Soon. Is that the end of the show?
Good to go. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for having us on, Joy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You too. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you can come to the convention, and glad that, I mean, I hope we should definitely talk again after the convention.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care.
You too. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.